Welcome to the Explainer. So, picture this. You wake up, you know exactly what to do, you knock out your biggest tasks in record time, and you finally kick that nasty procrastination habit to the curb. Sounds like a dream, right? I mean, we all know that terrible feeling of just drowning in busyness, but actually getting nothing done. Well, today's Explainer is pretty much the ultimate antidote to that. We're going to dive deep into Brian Tracy's powerhouse concept called Eat That Frog. It's a remarkably simple, yet totally game-changing productivity system that genuinely has the power to change your life.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The entire philosophy here actually rests on a pretty famous quote often attributed to Mark Twain. If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. Now, obviously, Twain wasn't talking about literally eating amphibians for breakfast. He was giving us this brilliant, vivid metaphor for tackling the exact things we desperately want to avoid.
So, what exactly is this frog? Simply put, your frog is your most important, most challenging task. It's the one with the biggest positive impact on your goals. Think about that massive, daunting project proposal you've been putting off because it just takes so much brain power. What do most of us do when we sit down at our desks? We check emails, we reorganize our folders, we scroll social media. We basically stay busy with low-value stuff because, let's face it, the frog is super intimidating. But successful people, they do the exact opposite. They spot that massive, ugly frog and they just eat it right away, guaranteeing their success by prioritizing high-value work.
To help you master this, we're distilling Tracy's rules into a quick, structured 4-phase masterclass to seriously boost your daily productivity. We'll be looking at 1. Identify what truly matters. 2. Prioritize and plan ahead. 3. Execute with intense focus. And 4. Build a habit.
Starting off with Phase 1, identify what truly matters. Finding the frog. You see, before we can take any meaningful action, we need absolute clarity on what our goals actually are. And that brings us to Lesson 1, set the table. Before you do any work, you need to write down your goals and define the exact result you want. Clarity is literally power here. When you have a clear destination, your daily decision-making becomes so much easier. In fact, the research behind this source material shows that people who physically write down their goals are way more likely to actually achieve them. Why? Simply because they know exactly where they're going.
And you know, this beautifully ties right into Lesson 3, the 80-20 rule, which you might also know as the Pareto principle. It reveals a pretty stark reality. Roughly 80% of your results come from just 20% of your activities. Think about that for a second. Not all tasks are created equal. Some create massive value, while others are just completely draining your time. The real secret to finding your frog is identifying that vital 20% and being absolutely ruthless about focusing your energy right there. Which leads us directly to Lesson 6, focus on key result areas. Listen, every single role has a few core responsibilities that matter more than anything else. Your job right now is to identify the specific areas where your performance has the highest possible impact. Once you've got those nailed down, you zero in on them and focus on improving continuously. Seriously, strengthening these key areas will dramatically skyrocket your overall effectiveness.
Moving right along to Phase 2, prioritize and plan ahead. Planning the menu. Now, planning is what turns chaos into order. And remember this, every single minute you spend planning saves you so many minutes during actual execution. Just look at Lesson 2, plan every day in advance. The idea here is simple but incredibly powerful. You just create a list for tomorrow at the end of today. Why? Well, when you wake up, you already know exactly what needs to be done. It completely wipes out that morning decision fatigue and lets you hit the ground running immediately.
But how do you actually structure that list? That's where Lesson 7 comes in, the ABCDE Method. Let's walk through this 5-step prioritization sequence together. A tasks are your frogs. These are very important with serious consequences if you ignore them. B tasks are important, sure, but less critical. C tasks are nice to do, but entirely non-essential. D means delegate whenever possible, and E, well, E means eliminate completely. And here is the golden rule you absolutely must follow. Never ever work on a B task when an A task is just sitting there unfinished. Remember, your A task is the frog. Eat it first.
To help figure out which is which, we look at Lesson 4. Always think about the consequences before you start a task. High-value tasks, those A tasks we just talked about, usually carry significant long-term consequences for your life or your career. Low-value tasks, they have little to no future impact. Highly successful people are relentless about focusing only on activities that hold the highest future value. Now let me break our rhythm for just a second here to ask you a kind of surprising question. What should you procrastinate on? Yeah, you heard me right. What should you actually procrastinate on?
The answer is actually found in Lesson 5, Practice Creative Procrastination. Here's the reality check. Everyone procrastinates, every single one of us. So the secret isn't to magically cure procrastination entirely. It's to intentionally delay the unimportant stuff. You practice creative procrastination by purposely postponing low-value activities. You have to say no to distractions so that you actually have the time and energy to say an enthusiastic yes to those meaningful, high-impact tasks.
Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how it transitions us right into the actual work. Phase 3, execute with intense focus. Eating the frog. To execute properly, we have to look at Lesson 8. Concentrate on one task. It is so incredibly easy to fall into the multitasking trap, but honestly, it's a total illusion that just tanks your productivity. High performers do the exact opposite. They pick their most important task, their biggest frog, and they work on it continuously without switching gears. Deep, unbroken focus is what produces much better results in significantly less time.
If that sounds a bit daunting, just remember Lesson 9. Build momentum. Take one small step. Just one. Getting started is almost always the hardest part of any project, right? But once you take that single small step, momentum just kind of takes over. Progress creates motivation, and then that motivation creates even more progress. The simple act of just starting is exactly what breaks your procrastination and gets you moving forward.
And that brings us to our final phase. Phase 4, build the habit, a daily diet.
Because at the end of the day, true productivity isn't about downloading the perfect app or buying fancy tools. It's about repeatedly doing what needs to be done, day in and day out. And that requires Lesson 10, develop self-discipline. Self-discipline is literally the bridge between your goals and actually achieving them. It means taking action and eating your frog even when you really don't feel like it. And the more disciplined you become, the more control you ultimately have over your own life and success.
So let's summarize the key takeaways from this explainer. The true power of this system comes purely from its simplicity and its consistency. Identify your most important task. Do it first thing every single day. Plan your workout in advance. Eliminate those unnecessary time-wasting tasks. And work with intense, unbroken concentration. It's really not complicated, but doing it consistently, that's what yields extraordinary results.
I want to leave you with this final thought today. Ask yourself honestly, what is the absolute biggest frog you need to eat today? Seriously, don't wait. I challenge you to immediately apply these strategies, because knocking out one wildly important task every single day is exactly how you transform your career and your future. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and go eat that frog.